Welcome to Scramble Game Show. Today we have a guest. You probably soon will see him everywhere and on TV, newspaper, and his name is Rob Astorino. We invite him because we want him to tell us why he's running for this county executive position. And for our purpose, of course, we want our children to be educated about our political system and why people serve in the government position. We want our community to be informed. So today is our chance to hear Mr. Astorino. Let's welcome him.
All right, thank you for having me.
Thank you
It's
for
great.
our show.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's great.
And I know you're probably very busy, tired, and so on. You have been, talking, but every opportunity in the election time, I assume that is worthwhile.
Absolutely. I've been doing this now. Well, March was the official candidacy. That's where we announced that I was running in March. But before that, I had been raising some money and meeting with people and organizations and doing all the legwork. So we've been at this technically since March, which is 6 months.
Right. I remember you telling me that you have a schedule, you still hold a full-time job,
right,
until certain time you're really going to be full-time on campaign.
Right. And I'm on a leave of absence now. I left Labor Day and I'll go back hopefully to wrap things up, as I expect I will. Right. November 5th, I'll go back to work. I work at Sirius Satellite Radio in Manhattan, and so it was very hard. All summer, I was getting on the train, going into Manhattan, working all day, coming home 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then going out and campaigning.
Right.
So it's been a long, long road, but we're almost at the end, and we're going to win this.
Good, good. Well, as our audience, even though the show seemed to be just for children, for family, but we broadcast throughout the Westchester County, even Putnam County. So it's well sort of watched. And I believe this is the public channel is the best medium for communities to learn about these political issues and so on, because they are not spansored, paid by somebody. This is spontaneous. I invite you. I also invite your opponent, Mr. Spano, anybody who wishes to come. And our purpose is just to hear what you want to say and tell us why you want to run for this position. Yeah. So let's start from that.
Well, I ran in 2005, and we got a lot closer than people anticipated. It was a different time, though, 4 years ago. The county was, the economy was doing well.
Right.
Everyone's 401k was a 401k.
Right.
We had housing prices that were appreciating. That's exactly right. It's now a 201k. And so everyone was feeling good, and everything was going well. So I was talking about property taxes and the need to start reining them in because they were out of control, as was spending in the county and state. But not everyone was paying attention because they were good old times. Now in 2009, we have some bad situations. People are losing their jobs or afraid of losing their jobs. The economy is not doing well. The investments are down. Housing prices are down. So taxes and spending mean a lot more to people now than they did 4 years ago.
Right.
But the message is the same. We have got to get this tax madness under control. The county executive, Andy Spano, has raised county taxes 60% in 7 years. That is unsustainable. People are moving out of Westchester County. They're moving to Fairfield County, Connecticut. They're moving to North Carolina. They're moving anywhere but Westchester because
we're the highest in taxes.
We're the highest tax county in America now, the second year in a row. And that's not something to be proud about. No way. So we have got to get this tax madness under control, and I will. I realize I'm living it under the Spano taxes. My wife and I, we just had our third baby.
Congratulations.
Thank you, a couple days ago. And so we are, like most other people in Westchester, we're raising a family. My wife and I, both born and raised in Westchester. My son is 6 years old in first grade. My daughter is 4 in pre-K. And now my latest addition, our daughter Ashlyn, is just days old. And so
you have a direct sort of a touch with
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you know, I look
growing families.
Oh, yeah, and I'm struggling like everybody else is struggling. I know exactly what these taxes are doing to our quality of life. These high taxes mean that seniors are moving out,
Right.
which means if they're leaving Westchester, they're going to Florida or wherever. That means you see your grandchildren at Christmas time or Thanksgiving and you talk to them on the phone.
Right.
That means that people who grew up in Westchester, that would love to live in Westchester County where they went to school or the town that they grew up in, they're moving, if they're lucky, to Dutchess County. For the most part, though, and I know because I'm getting emails and Facebook messages from people I went to school with, they're all over the country.
Right, right.
They would love to live here. And the crazy part is they can afford the down payment. They could afford the 30-year mortgage. They cannot afford the taxes.
Right.
And that's why seniors are leaving. They paid off their house 10
Right.
years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. And now, on a fixed income, they're getting a $15,000, $20,000 tax bill, and
Right,
they
right,
can't
right.
afford that.
This really destroyed the true community.
It certainly has.
Community based on family.
Absolutely. And these taxes have become so damaging that it does have an effect on family lives because families can't afford to live here. And even when there are divorces, you know, now you've got single parents trying to make it, and they can't afford it. You know, the rents are high, the mortgages are high. You know, a condo, which was, you know, $300,000 6, 7, 8 years ago, is now $500,000, $600,000, and the taxes that go with it. So we have got to get this tax madness under control, and I will.
This certainly is a right message, but in order to get the taxes down, you have to cut down the expenses.
Exactly.
So how are you going to cut down the county, government expenses?
Absolutely good question. You can't get this tax craziness under control until you get a grip on spending. Now, Andy Spano has raised spending. He's added $1 billion to the budget in the last 12 years. $1 billion.
For a county. Yeah.
For county spending. Our county budget. People are just blown away by this when I tell them. I said, how big is county government? First of all, most people don't know, or they don't know what it does for them. And when I tell them the county budget is almost $2 billion, that the county itself has over 5,000 employees, people are flabbergasted. They had no idea how big it is. Now, Andy Spano says, well, we cut spending this year. You know what they cut? $100,000 out of a $1.8 billion budget. That's not even a ripple in a pond. We have got to make some major changes. And I think the changes that we make here could be an example for how Albany, God forbid they ever do what's right. God forbid they ever get out of this dysfunctional phase of
Well,
it.
tell us a little bit example. So
we have to bring down the size and scope of county government. I mentioned we have 5,000 employees. Now, each employee has a salary, fringe benefits, health care, pension, all that. Over the course of 4 or 5 years, I want to, and this is what I will do, through attrition, when people leave, we're not going to fill those positions unless it's absolutely necessary. So we're going to have a reduction in salaries, reduction in fringe benefits and pensions, health care, all that stuff. And we think, I believe, and I've consulted with some pretty smart people, some CEOs, some business leaders, we can get this down to about 4,000 employees or less, and nobody would know the difference. We can through consolidating departments, through finding efficiencies, and I've done this when I was on the town board in Mount Pleasant. When I was on the county board, I proposed separate budgets which would have no tax increases, reduced spending, and didn't even affect any services. It can be done. Erie County Executive Chris Collins is going to be joining me next week here in Westchester, and we're going to have a roundtable with business leaders. Erie County is sort of an example. They had about 5,000 employees. They went down to 4,000. No complaints from people. Services still are provided, but it's a leaner, more efficient county government. And that's what we can do here.
Well, this
and it's
is,
very similar. Erie County is the same exact population as Westchester, up in Buffalo.
Well, this is a message usually the politicians sort of do not want to say because it's sort of unfriendly, right? Cutting employees, particularly on your...
But we're not going to be cutting. I'm not going in with an axe and saying, look, we're going in responsibly. Picture this. You've got a train going 150 miles an hour.
Right.
If you pull the emergency brake, it's going to slam off,
yeah.
and go off the rails. but you want to slow it down, slow it down, slow it down, stop it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do effectively and the right way. So over the period of 4 years, as people retire or resign, we're not filling them unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right.
Quite frankly, we are very top-heavy in this county. We have a lot of commissioners, deputy commissioners, executive directors for all 40 departments. There's no need for that. We can combine departments that overlap and show the way. But I must lead by example, and I will. Day one, what has happened is the county executive has quadrupled the expense in his own office and doubled the size of it.
In terms of personnel?
Of personnel and expenses. I will lead by example, day one, cut my own department by 10%, and then start telling all the commissioners, you're going to do the same. You're going to find efficiencies. We're going to do this right. Our county employees do not contribute anything towards health insurance. That's a big expense. Now, almost everyone in the private sector does. Everyone in state government pays 10%. Municipal government employees pay.
That's first time I heard.
Yeah, and this was something that the county executive just signed off on and negotiated. So I will, again, set the example. On day one, both myself and all non-represented employees, so all my political appointees, my management staff, et cetera, we will start contributing to our health insurance.
You mean appointee gets health
Full
insurance from the county?
Full benefits.
Wow.
As well as pension costs, et cetera. So we spend over $100 million a year on health insurance. Now, if we had a 10%, people contribute 10% to their own health insurance, which is modest, and that's what everyone's doing in the world right now.
Right.
We would save $10 million right away and start containing costs. That's what we have to do. Playland Amusement Park. Most people don't know.
Yeah.
That Playland is owned and operated by the County of Westchester. It's the only amusement park in the United States that's owned by a government entity, and there's a reason for that. It loses $5 million a year. Right. It's lost $37 million in 10 years. I
forget now, initially, what was the rationale to own it?
In 1928, the county, during the Depression, started this amusement park, and it was a regional attraction. Through the years, they just continued to own it, but poured more and more money into it, to the point now where, as I mentioned, it lost another $5 million minimum this year. The crazy part, though, is 65% of the people who come to Playland are from outside Westchester. So you have Westchester taxpayers subsidizing non-residents in a time when we can't afford it.
Well, why isn't people ever thinking about, say, sell this or give it privatize it?
Well, this is what I'm going to do. This is my plan. It's unacceptable to lose money at Playland. I don't think we should be in that business to begin with.
Particularly for purpose. I mean,
right.
The purpose is entertainment.
Exactly,
right?
And that's a non-essential service. That's not something that government should be involved in. We shouldn't be running a dragon coaster.
Right.
But what I will do is, the county owns the property. What I'm going to have is private companies, concessionaires come in. They're going to rent space. They're going to bring in their own equipment, their own rides. It's going to be certified by the Department of Labor. They're going to indemnify the county taxpayer from risk and insurance. They're going to pay rent, and they're going to pay a percentage of their profits.
But it sounds very simple procedure to pursue. I mean, this is
They used to do this. They used to do this a while ago. When Spano came in, he wanted to take more and more control of the park. And so he was buying away from everybody and owning the rides. And we spent $8 million, the county did, in the last 2 years buying rides. So the county now has the risk. The county is fronting the money. And the onus is on the county. Well, his excuse for why it loses money every year, the weather. Well, then let's break that model. You don't build a model that loses money every year and blame it on the weather. So what ours would do is it would inoculate us and the taxpayer from downturn in the economy or bad situation on the rides, or of course bad weather.
Yeah.
But that's an example of how we need to start thinking differently, how we need to act a little bit more like efficient governments out there and business, and treat the taxpayer the way they're supposed to be treated.
Right.
So those are some of the big issues.
Right.
We can talk, and I'm sure we're going to about this
there are a lot
whole
of
housing
issues.
issue.
I mean, just to be fair for Mr. Spano, I welcome him to come to our show and even to have a debate.
I wish he was sitting right here.
Yeah, we still have 2 weeks' time. I have 2 more shows to do. Every Friday we produce shows. So I'm just saying that
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah.
If he wants to be on our show and debate with you or talk about his position or his side of the story,
Right.
certainly welcome. Okay, let's come back to our discussion. Besides, the tax and efficiency, government efficiencies. I mean, recently we have heard this big issue about the housing.
Yeah.
That the county has sort of lost a lawsuit that has a serious consequences. And we would love to hear what from your side and what's that.
Well, my
all about?
side is exactly what the government has said. So I'm taking the words that I'm going to use are powerful, but these are direct quotes from the U.S. District Court Judge Denise Coate and the U.S. Attorney. A lawsuit was filed by a housing agency in 2006. They claimed that Westchester County was taking money from the federal government and not using it the way they were supposed to. They were also filling out forms and lying. They filed a lawsuit. The county executive's office called it garbage. 3 years later, the county executive in a debate said, I had to go to the Justice Department and say, bail me out. So here's what happened. The federal government said to the county executive, you defrauded the federal government for misusing money, and you falsified documents.
That's a very serious charge.
Absolutely is very serious. So the situation now is a settlement between Justice Department, the court, and this housing agency that filed the lawsuit. This is a brutal, brutal settlement for the taxpayers on many fronts. Number one, we have to build 750 units of subsidized housing in 31 communities.
31
different communities. The county taxpayer is on the hook for this. This is the Andy Spano bailout plan. $51 million has been set aside to build the housing. Now, you're a mathematician, right?
Well, that kind of math I think I can handle.
Put it on the crossword puzzle here. 750 divided by 52 is $68,000 a unit. That doesn't work in Westchester. By the county's own estimation, there will be $300,000 to $400,000 per unit to be built. That takes us in the hundreds of millions of dollar range. The worst part of this aspect is, in this 38-page settlement, which is unachievable, the 5 legislators who voted against it were 2 Democrats, 3 Republicans. They were the senior members of the board. All 5 were lawyers, and the 2 leaders of both parties voted against it. And they did so for the right reasons. They said, first of all, Mr. Spano messed this up so badly, he's put us in an unwinnable situation. Number 2, it's unachievable. We cannot build 750 units for $50 million. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with hundreds of millions of dollars. They also felt the county board should have gone to the Justice Department and renegotiated the settlement and got out of some of these bad, bad terms, or take it to court. Now, here's what the county board ultimately did vote on. This settlement that the Spano administration negotiated, in addition to the units that have to be built in these particular communities, the federal government has assigned a monitor to oversee that these units are built in the next 7 years. And there are benchmarks.
Right.
After 2 years, X amount have to be built. After 3 years, et cetera. If we don't meet those benchmarks, there are fines. The worst case, though, is the language in the settlement basically pits the county against the municipalities. By all means necessary, and that's in the language, the county must ensure the development of these units. Now
Does county have a jurisdiction in that regard?
No, they don't.
So how do you
Well,
enforce?
this is the problem. If the county says to Yorktown or to Somers or to Larchmont or Bronxville or all the other communities that have to build this is the piece of property we want to build 30 units on. And the community says, no, that's not where our zoning code is. We want to build our own affordable housing. That's not where we want to build it. The federal monitor can force the county to sue. So now you have zoning codes that are in jeopardy. You have the taxpayer who is going to have to sue and defend.
More legal fees, right?
More legal fees for communities and for the county. That is an awful, awful situation the county executive put us in. Why would we ever negotiate that and agree to that?
Yeah. Well, this is really serious. We actually had George Orwell's on our show before also touched upon this issue, and I really understood this seriousness.
And I agree. You know, we got to get one thing straight. I'm for affordable housing.
Right. People, yeah.
I think most people are, but not with a gun to our head by the federal government and the county looking down at municipalities saying you have to do it this way. Right. Part of this agreement, as is interpreted by a lot of the legislators and myself, page 24 of the agreement, this basically nullifies what communities would build for workforce housing, for our volunteers, for our teachers. They can't build this now. They've got to build this particular type of housing, which is economic-based, and market it all over outside of Westchester. So non-residents could come in and qualify for the housing. Right. Now this is, it is and it isn't based on race. It's based on income. But the reason we got in this mess is to further fair housing, the county executive had to say, I have taken race into consideration, that it's not an impediment in communities to further this fair housing. He admitted, and his planning department admitted, they didn't study that, they didn't do that, but they signed off that they did. And so that's one of the reasons why we're in this mess.
As a penalty.
Yes.
Nice. Well, this is so serious. I want to ask you is that certainly you hope to get elected, and you are going to face this issue.
That's exactly right.
What do you have in mind that you can deal with this?
Well, we're looking into a lot of different things. One, can we get out of this? Can we go back and renegotiate?
Have you talked to some lawyers?
We have talked to some lawyers. They're looking into this. Some believe we can. There are communities that are looking into this and whether or not they can sue, because in effect, the county negotiated on behalf of these communities when they signed the settlement and said, we're going to build it in those communities.
Right,
third party, and the counties, the municipalities had no say whatsoever, and they're being directly affected. There's a lot of different routes we could go, and those are what we're going to have to determine in January when we get our team involved, our legal team, et cetera, to start looking at this.
But isn't there a deadline in December for a proposal or a plan to be presented?
And this is the crazy part. The county board had 45 days from August 10th to sign off on this.
45 August 10th.
So it was in mid-September that they had to agree to this. They were agreeing to something that they had no idea what they were agreeing to. All of the questions in the settlement, is there a hard cap on the money? No. Is what happens if we don't build 750 units? All these questions were unanswered for the most part. The settlement to them is unachievable, so why would they support it? They were also voting sight unseen. Where is the housing going to be put? Mr. Spano has until mid-December to submit the implementation plan to the federal government. So they're voting on it.
Does he even lined up the 31?
No. No, and most communities have a lot of questions about this. And I've talked to supervisors and mayors all over Westchester, and they're concerned because what happens if they don't agree? What happens if they can't identify property? And will the county sue, or will the county go through eminent domain? Will the county withhold funds that they receive from the federal government or county government or state as a way to, again, hit communities over the head if they don't agree with what the county wants to do? So there's a lot of unanswered questions, and that's what everyone's trying to sift through.
So from now till that deadline, say the federal mandate, is there any activity, a commission, or conference for the mayors or supervisors?
What's happening is happening behind closed doors. What I had said from the very beginning in August is for Mr. Spano to explain why he did what he did and what the ramifications were, and to have public hearings around Westchester and say, look, this is what the settlement is, this is where we're planning on building it. His answer was, once I submit to the federal government and determine where I'm going to put the housing, then I'll have a public hearing, and basically tell people where it's going to go as opposed to get community input. This is an emotional issue.
Very much.
People should understand what it is, and maybe there'll be less fear, but at least people will have an opportunity to discuss and to have their voices heard. And that's what government should be. It should be transparent, it should be accountable. It should not be done behind closed doors.
Right.
And people have to understand why we're in this mess in the first place, because Andy Spano fraudulently signed documents.
Well, this is a sort of almost comical in the sense that the election is in November 3rd. And whoever gets elected immediately has to deal with this issue. And prior to that, it seems to be nobody's doing anything.
Right.
So you got like a week or two to wave your wand and come
Right.
up with a plan.
That's right. And this all goes into the mismanagement. This all goes into why taxes are so high, why we're the highest tax county in America for the second year in a row, because now we have to, now only in Andy Spano's head or in his math does this not affect taxes. $62 million has to be paid out. Of course that's going to affect taxes.
No,
It's
of
got to
course.
come from somewhere.
Yes. In fact, that's not enough.
It's not even close to enough. And you know, he's trying to cover it up and say, well, we were going to build this housing anyway. No, we weren't. We weren't going to build it this way. We weren't going to build it with a gun to our head. We were going to work with communities. Communities are working on their own to build their own affordable housing to meet their own community's needs, not to you know, take care of a settlement with the federal government and have Uncle Sam sit there and say, you're going to build it there, you're going to build it there, you're going to build it there, and I'll tell you who's going to live there. That's not what it's about.
Right. So this is really okay. Again, I think well, I certainly hope that Mr. Spano is watching our show and come forward and let's have a talk, because
I would love
this
that.
is a serious thing that all county residents should be concerned.
Absolutely. You should go on the website and look. It's ADC, American Anti-Discrimination Council. I forget what it is, but it's a group that they'll post the whole settlement, or just Google in Westchester Housing Settlement, and you'll read the terms and stipulations, and you will pull your hair out when you look at this. You'll say, how could anyone agree to this? This is awful. This is Big Brother coming in and dictating the terms.
But didn't our county lawyers get involved in this lawsuit?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is something that they negotiated. We had an outside firm that we spent millions of dollars to represent us, and obviously they did not do a good job with their advice. And the bottom line is, the county executive and the planning department, they got us in this situation in the first place. If they had done what they were supposed to do and didn't falsify documents, we wouldn't be in this situation. If they used the money properly from HUD, we wouldn't be in this situation. But now we have to bail them out for their mistake. And the federal judge said, you can go to court, but I've basically determined that you're guilty.
Yeah.
You can go to court, and if you lose, damages are going to be tripled. But we're going to determine whether you recklessly or intentionally falsified those documents, and neither are good.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we talk about these things, when you get passionate, time just flies.
It does. Let's go on another couple hours.
Unfortunately, you can't. I know there are a lot of issues. You know, I certainly like to ask you questions about, you know, county services, you know, things like that sort.
Yeah, the county does a good job in things, you know, but we just have to be more efficient.
Right.
We have to get this tax situation under control, and I will. And I ask people today, go to robastorino.com, learn about who I am, what I'm about. I'm ready to lead.
Good.
I am ready to go.
We don't have much time now. I will give you a minute to speak directly to the audience.
Well, if you're tired of what's been going on, if you realize that we are the highest tax county in America, if you go crazy when you get your tax bill, you have to make a change, because Andy Spano has had 3 terms. He's looking for 16 years, which I think is too much for anybody, and nothing's going to change. We're going to continue to go tax and spend, tax and spend. If you're struggling, if you're thinking about moving out of Westchester, don't. Vote for me. I'm going to make those changes starting in January, because I'm living here in Westchester. I want to continue to live here in Westchester and raise my family.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me, you know, hold on. I'll speak just a few words to the public. Okay. I think as a public show, we welcome any candidate to appear on our show, and certainly the door is open. We certainly welcome Mr. Spano to come forward, even debate with you
sure.
if you two agree. We have 2 more weeks to produce shows, so my phone number is 248-6770. Normally I don't give out the number, but this is such an important election, and I would risk that. So thank you.
No pranks.
Right. Thank you for watching, and we're looking forward to further interviews with other candidates. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great.